I asked my wife what I was besides the money after she told me to cook for yourself. So I filed for divorce, started cooking only for myself, opened my own account, found the joint statements full of her extras. And 2 months later, the divorce was finalized, the house stayed mine, and she moved out. AF Tales is back with another story. This one is about a husband who worked long, brutal days, paid for everything, and finally realized his wife only valued him as a provider. See if you think he waited too long to act. My name is David. I'm 32, and I work as a field technician for an industrial equipment company. Most days I'm out fixing broken machinery in warehouses, factories, and construction sites. The hours are long, usually 12 to 14 a day, and the work is hard in a way that stays in your muscles long after you get home. I'm married to Linda. She's 29, and she has 2 kids from her first marriage, Ryan and Sophie. Ryan is 11, Sophie is 8. When Linda and I first got together 5 years ago, it felt like I had finally found the kind of family I always wanted. We cooked together on weekends. She tried new recipes she found online. I grilled in the backyard. The kids set the table like it was part of some big game. We sat down together, talked about our days, laughed at Ryan's bad jokes, and Sophie would always want to show me whatever she had drawn that week. Back then, it felt warm, balanced, real. After we got married 3 years ago, Linda left her office job and started doing freelance graphic design from home. I supported that decision completely. She wanted to be around more for Ryan and Sophie, pick them up from school, help with homework, be present in their daily lives. That made sense to me. I respected it. At first, I told myself the money situation would even out over time. My income was steady, hers changed depending on projects, so naturally I started covering more. First it was the mortgage, then the car payments, then most of the groceries, utilities, school supplies, sports fees, and pretty much everything else. I kept thinking it was temporary. I kept telling myself that when her freelance work picked up, things would balance again. They never did. Months turned into a year, then 2. I didn't complain because I thought that was what love looked like. You carry more when the person you love needs help. That part didn't bother me at first. What started bothering me were the smaller things, the ones that are easy to excuse until they start forming a pattern. Dinner was rarely ready when I got home anymore, even on days when I texted her my schedule. The house wasn't dirty exactly, but it had that feeling of neglect, like no one really cared whether I came home to calm or chaos. Linda spent a lot of time on her laptop, which I assumed was work. Sometimes it was. Sometimes I would walk in and see her scrolling social media or chatting with friends while the kids watched TV. I'm not saying she did nothing. She was busy with the kids and with freelance jobs. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling invisible unless a bill needed to be paid or something needed fixing. That was the first problem, not the money. The feeling that my only value showed up when I was useful. Then came a Thursday in late July that I still remember perfectly. I got called out at 6 in the morning to a factory 2 hours away. Their main conveyor system had gone down overnight. The place was like an oven. No real air conditioning in the work area, just giant fans pushing hot air around. It was 95 degrees outside, hotter inside, and I spent the entire day under machinery, troubleshooting panels, replacing burned-out motors, dealing with grease, sharp metal, sweat, and the kind of exhaustion that makes your hands shake a little when you stop moving. I had 1 protein bar around noon and nothing else. By the time I finished, it was nearly 8 at night. Then I still had the 2-hour drive home. All the way back, I kept thinking about 3 things: a shower, a real meal, a little care. I got home a little after 9. The house was quiet except for the TV in the living room. Ryan and Sophie were in their rooms getting ready for bed. Linda was on the couch with her laptop. I dropped my work bag by the door and went straight to the kitchen, hoping maybe there were leftovers I could heat up. There wasn't much. Sandwich stuff, a few yogurts, half a pizza that had been sitting there for 2 days and looked like a bad idea. Nothing that felt like someone had thought, David's going to come home late and exhausted, maybe I should make sure there's something for him. I stood there for a second, just staring into the fridge. Then I went back into the living room and asked Linda if there was anything for dinner. She didn't even look up. She just said, "We ate at 6. There's stuff in the fridge." I told her I had just gotten home, that I'd been working 14 hours in brutal heat, and I was hoping for something more than sandwich supplies. That's when she finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't sorry, it wasn't concerned, it was annoyed. "You're an adult," she said. "Cook for yourself." "I'm not running a restaurant." Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because making my own food was impossible. I know how to cook. That wasn't the point. The point was how quickly she dismissed me. How little space there was in her voice for the fact that I was tired, hungry, and standing right in front of her asking for a small amount of care. I waited for her to soften, to realize how cold it sounded, to say she didn't mean it like that. She just went back to her laptop. So I turned around, went back to the kitchen, and made myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I ate it standing at the counter like a 10-year-old home alone, and with every bite I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't really about the sandwich. It was about what it proved. I kept thinking about my parents. My dad worked construction his whole life. Long hours, hard labor, bad weather, tired bones. My mom always made sure there was food for him when he came home. Not because he demanded it, not because of some strict old rule, because she cared. Because when you love someone, you notice what they carry and sometimes you lighten it where you can. That's what I thought marriage was. Not one person serving the other, just consideration, mutual care. Standing there with that sad sandwich, I realized I had been living on an idea that no longer matched reality. I took a shower that night and got into bed while Linda slept like nothing had happened. But I lay there staring at the ceiling, hearing that sentence over and over. "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." And somewhere in the middle of the night, I decided she was right about one thing. I was an adult. Maybe it was time I started taking care of myself like one. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't going to fight with Linda. I wasn't going to ask her to understand what she clearly did not want to understand. I was just going to do exactly what she told me to do, take care of myself. That Friday, I stopped at the grocery store on the way home and bought food just for me. Good steaks, fresh vegetables, the expensive coffee I always skipped because it felt unnecessary. Craft beer I had looked at a dozen times and never bought. Things I liked. Things no one else in the house ever noticed. When I got home around 7, Linda and the kids had already eaten. She was back on the couch with her laptop. I didn't ask what they had. I didn't mention dinner. I just went into the kitchen and started cooking. I seasoned a ribeye, got my cast iron pan hot, and cooked it exactly the way I like it. Medium rare, hard sear, real flavor. I roasted asparagus with garlic, made a baked potato, opened one of the beers, and plated the whole thing like it mattered. The smell filled the house. Ryan wandered into the kitchen and said it smelled really good. He asked what I was making. I told him it was just dinner for myself. A minute later, Linda appeared in the doorway. She looked at the food, then at me. "You made steak," she said. "Yeah," I said. "I was hungry after work." She stood there for a second like she expected the next part of the scene to happen automatically. Like I would offer her some or make another plate or slip back into the old pattern. I didn't. I picked up my plate, grabbed my beer, and ate in the small office room I had mostly turned into my own space. That silence said more than an argument would have. The next morning I got up early and made myself breakfast. Eggs with cheese, bacon, toast, fresh orange juice. The kind of breakfast I used to make for everyone on weekends. Linda came into the kitchen in her pajamas and looked at the cleaned pan, then at my plate. "You made breakfast," she said. "For myself," I answered. She opened the fridge, looked around, then asked, "You're not making any for us?" I looked at her and repeated the exact words she had used on me. "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." Her face changed 3 times in about 2 seconds. shock, anger, then that fake calm people use when they do not want to admit they got the message. She grabbed a yogurt and walked out. That was the moment I knew she understood the problem perfectly well when it landed on her. Sometimes the fastest way to reveal a double standard is to follow it. Over the next few days, I kept doing exactly that. I cooked for myself. I did my own laundry separately. I took care of my own schedule. I stopped automatically saying yes to every family errand or last-minute request, not in a cruel way, just in a clear way. Linda hated it almost immediately. The kids asked if I wanted to go with them to the community pool one day, and I told them I had errands. That was true. I needed to hit the hardware store and pick up a few things. But I also wanted to step back and stop acting like I was always on call for a family rhythm that no longer really included me. Sunday evening, Linda told me she was taking Ryan and Sophie to a movie. She didn't ask if I wanted to come. She just told me they were going. So I texted my friend Ethan and asked if he wanted to meet up at a sports bar to watch the game. We had wings, beer, and a normal conversation about work, cars, and old stories. For 3 hours, I didn't think about home at all. When I got back that night, Linda was sitting in the living room waiting for me with her arms crossed. "You went out," she said. "Yeah," I told her. "You guys went to the movies, so I met Ethan." She said they didn't invite me because I never want to see kids' movies, and then she added that she thought maybe we could all do something together afterward as a family. I just looked at her. "You planned the movie without asking me," I said. "You never mentioned doing anything after. How was I supposed to know that?" She had no real answer for that. She just went to the bedroom angry. That became the pattern. Monday, I came home and made dinner for myself. Tuesday, Linda suddenly tried to make a nice dinner for everyone, including me. It felt forced, like she was performing normal instead of being it. Wednesday, I did only my own laundry. Thursday, she asked me to pick Ryan up from soccer practice, and I told her I couldn't because I had plans. I did. I had a dentist appointment I had been putting off for months because I always prioritized everyone else's needs first. That evening, she told me I was not acting like myself. I asked her what she meant. She said, "You never used to be like this." I said, "Like what?" "Available." That one landed. Because it was true. I had been available for everything. That was the version of me she missed, not the husband, the convenience. Then came the moment that changed this from emotional clarity into financial clarity. One Friday night, I sat down and looked carefully through our joint bank account. I had not paid close attention before because I figured we were both adults and we were both contributing in our own ways. But once I started going through 6 months of statements, I saw a pattern that made my stomach turn. Hair salon visits, new clothes, expensive skincare, subscription boxes, frequent takeout on days I wasn't home. Small luxury purchases over and over again, all of it coming out of the joint account. My account, really, because that was where my entire paycheck went. Linda's freelance income went into her own separate account that I had no access to. There were expenses for the kids too, of course, and those didn't bother me. Kids need things. But what got to me was this. There was nothing spent on me, nothing thoughtful, nothing generous, not a birthday gift, not a surprise meal, not even something simple like my favorite snacks or a book I had mentioned wanting. I was funding a lifestyle I wasn't actually part of. That realization is ugly when it finally becomes clear. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The next day, I opened my own checking account. Starting the following week, I arranged to deposit only enough into the joint account to cover my share of the actual household bills. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, necessary expenses. The rest would go into my own account. When Linda asked why I had been at the bank so long, I told her I was looking into some financial options. That was close enough to the truth. That Sunday, I spent most of the day in the garage organizing my tools. Ryan came out and helped me for a while. He handed me wrenches, asked how different things worked, and just talked to me. It was one of the best conversations I'd had in the house in weeks. Later, Sophie brought me a drawing she had made of our family. In the picture, I was standing a little apart from everyone else. I don't think she meant anything by it. She just drew what she saw. I taped that drawing to my toolbox and felt this heavy sadness settle into me. Even the kids could see the shape of things. That night, lying in bed with Linda turned away from me on the far side of the mattress, I finally said the truth to myself. In that house, I wasn't really a husband. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even fully part of the family life I was paying to support. I was a provider, a resource, the person who kept everything running, and the worst part was that I had helped build that system by accepting less and less for years. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They think if they just keep giving, eventually someone will notice and give back. But people rarely value what they are allowed to take for granted. That Monday on my lunch break, I called a family law attorney. A coworker had recommended him. His name was Robert, and he agreed to meet with me that Wednesday. I left work early, drove downtown, and sat in his office explaining everything. The marriage, the finances, the house, the kids, the account setup, Linda's separate income, my full paycheck going into the joint account. He listened, asked good questions, and then laid out the facts. The house was in my name only. My parents had given me the down payment as a wedding gift. I had been paying the mortgage. The marriage was under 5 years. Ryan and Sophie were not biologically mine. Linda had kept her freelance income separate while I carried most of the household costs. Robert told me my financial exposure was limited and that I was in a strong position for a clean separation. I sat in my truck afterward for 20 minutes, just breathing. For the first time, leaving did not feel like a fantasy or a threat. It felt possible. But before I made that decision, I wanted one honest conversation. The following Saturday, I asked Linda to talk while the kids were at her mother's house. We sat at the kitchen table, and I told her everything as calmly as I could. I told her how lonely it felt to work brutal hours and come home to indifference. I told her I felt like an ATM. I told her I was carrying almost all the financial weight while her money stayed separate. I told her the cooking incident mattered not because of food, but because of what it represented: a lack of care. She listened, but her face got harder with every sentence. When I finished, she told me I was being overly sensitive. She said she had a lot on her plate with the kids and work. She said no one forced me to choose my job. She tried to make the whole dinner situation sound childish, like I was upset over one meal instead of what that meal had exposed. I told her again that it wasn't about cooking. It was about feeling unseen. She rolled her eyes. That told me more than her words did. Then I asked the question I had been carrying for weeks. What am I to you, Linda? What am I besides the money? She opened her mouth right away, then stopped. The pause stretched. Finally, she said, "You're a good provider." That was it. Not husband, not partner, not best friend, not family, provider. She said it like it should have been enough. I reached into my folder, pulled out the divorce papers, and set them on the table. Her face went white. I told her I was filing for divorce because I could not stay married to someone who only saw me as a paycheck. Then she cried. She said we could fix it. She said she could change. She said she didn't mean it that way, but I had spent 3 years waiting for care that only seemed to matter once it was leaving. I told her something I had finally learned the hard way. If I have to force you to love me, then it isn't real. The next few weeks were tense. I moved into the spare bedroom. Linda switched between acting like the perfect wife and treating me like I was ruining everyone's life. The kids knew something was wrong. One night, Ryan asked me if I was moving out. I sat down with him and Sophie and explained as gently as I could that Linda and I were having grown-up problems and were going to live separately. Sophie asked if they had done something wrong. I told her absolutely not. Ryan asked if they would still see me. I told him yes, and I meant it. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. It was fast. There wasn't much to fight over. The house stayed mine. Linda moved out with the kids. The day before she left, she tried one last time. She got dressed up and started talking about going to the restaurant where we had our first date, like maybe if we replayed the beginning, we could pretend the middle had never happened. I looked at her and felt nothing except exhaustion. What we had ended long before the paperwork. I had just finally accepted it. That was 6 months ago. Since then, my life has changed in ways I didn't fully expect. I got promoted to senior technician and finally moved into more normal hours. I started going to the gym again. I reconnected with old friends. The house feels quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet, not the kind that comes from being ignored. Ryan and Sophie come over every other weekend, and those visits are actually good. Without all the tension, I get to enjoy being with them for what it is. Simple, honest, easy. A few days ago, Ethan asked if I thought I was ready to date again. I told him maybe. But this time I'll never forget something important. The moment someone tells you to take care of yourself, believe them. They may not say it directly, but sometimes what they really mean is that they have already stopped caring. I spent 3 years hoping Linda would see me. She didn't, not because she couldn't, because she didn't want to. She wanted a provider. Next time, if there is a next time, I'll look for something different, a real partner. Someone who shows care without being asked, someone who doesn't keep score only when it benefits them. Someone who notices when I come home tired and hungry and thinks, maybe I can make this day a little easier. And if I don't see that, I won't wait years hoping it appears. I'll leave early, while I still have enough of myself left to build something better. The lessons here are simple. Lesson 1, if care only flows in one direction, that is not a partnership. Lesson 2, being useful is not the same as being loved. Lesson 3, when someone reduces you to what you provide, believe what they are showing you. Lesson 4, boundaries often feel rude to people who benefited from your lack of them. And Lesson 5, sometimes taking care of yourself means leaving the place where no one else was ever going to do it. What would you have done after hearing, "You're an adult, cook for yourself"? Would you have tried to fix it, or would that have been your turning point too? And have you ever realized too late that in someone else's life, you were valued more for what you gave than for who you were?